Hi everyone, it's Yvette Le Blowitz from SpiritGirl.com and welcome to the Spirit Girl Talk Show podcast. I'm super excited to be here with you today and with our very special guest. Shonda Moralis is a psychotherapist, a women's impact coach, and entrepreneur, and host of Therapeutic Perspective, a mental health podcast where practitioners can earn CE credit hours for listening. She is the author of award-winning books, Breathe, Mama, Breathe, 5-Minute Mindfulness for Busy Mums, and Breathe, Empower, Achieve, 5-Minute Mindfulness for Women who do it all. Welcome to yourself and our Spirit Girl podcast listeners globally. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Yvette?
I'm so glad to be here. I'm officially holding up your book, Breathe, Empower, Achieve, 5-Minute Mindfulness for Women who do it all. How does it feel to have myself here in Australia holding your book up?
I know, it's fantastic. I love it. Across the globe.
So before we dive into your book, are you happy to tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
So you covered some of the basics. I can also tell you I am married. I have 2 kids. I have a 19-year-old daughter who's a junior in college, and she's actually studying in the UK right now this year. And I have a 9-year-old son. So there's a big spread between the two of them, which keeps it interesting and keeps me young and tired, I think, depending on the moment. I love to play outside, and my son keeps me moving, my 9-year-old.
And what inspired you to want to become a psychotherapist?
A kind of a long and twisty story. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college, university for you. And so when I graduated, I was still exploring, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to take a job doing something I'm interested in because I really don't know what this is. And I ended up at a women's health center and doing some counseling. I was hooked pretty early on. And in retrospect, it's kind of pretty clear. I've always been the helper, the one my friends would come to talk to. I'm just a natural listener. I like to hear people's stories. So it all fit. So I ended up going to grad school, and the rest is history in that regard.
And what about with your own practice?
I did some agency work. I actually went back to that women's health clinic after grad school work there, did some agency work, and then ended up in someone else's private practice. And then after a few years, decided to go out on my own, which I really love the independence, the flexibility. It was one of those things when I did go back to grad school to become a therapist, I knew I wanted to have a family and kids, and it really helped me have that sort of flexible lifestyle with my work. I can make my own schedule and so forth. So there are some downsides to being self-employed, but for the most part, I really love it.
What inspired you to want to write books?
I didn't set out to write the first book. The first book is Breathe, Mama, Breathe. What happened was I was writing blog posts. I was working with a lot of moms, and my son was an infant at the time. So I was really just writing for myself, for them. And that was the premise of Breathe, Mama, Breathe, because it was really about how do we hang on to mindfulness. I was a mindfulness teacher and a meditation teacher. And before my son was born, I was meditating faithfully for a half an hour every day. And then with a newborn, I mean, that goes right out the window. So I knew that was coming. So I wanted to be able to hang on to this, this mindfulness piece in my life in short, flexible ways. And so that's where the 5-minute mindfulness piece comes from. And I started teaching those practices to other busy moms and women, and found that with just 5 minutes a day, we really can make a big impact on our lives, that we think sometimes you need to have a half an hour a day, which is amazing if you can make that happen. But there are seasons in our lives where it's really just not probably very reasonable or feasible. So that's how that book was born. And Breathe, Empower, Achieve is my second book. And that came a few years after my son was starting to go into preschool and elementary, and I had a little more time on my hands, and I was sort of like, I really love working with women. It kind of brought me back to that full circle, back to that women's health clinic time. I wanted to empower women to really be able to use our voices and to really take care of ourselves, because we are often so taking care of everyone else and so hard on ourselves. And so that was kind of the crux of that.
What I really loved about your book was the 5-minute mindfulness breaks. You had so many in there from the kindness mindfulness break, the bathroom mindfulness break, the lunch mindfulness break. There are so many mindfulness breaks in there. Would you be able to share a couple of your favorite?
One of my favorites, it's a basic construct for mindfulness, which is the triangle mindful break. So if you imagine a triangle, and the 3 points in the triangle correspond to our thoughts, our body sensations, and our emotions. And what we know is they're very much intertwined. They affect one another really rapidly, and often we don't even know it's happening. And so when we can pause and practice this on a regular basis, what am I thinking? What are my thoughts in this moment? What are my emotions? What are my body sensations? It starts to really clue us in. And when we can recognize that and have even recognize one point on the triangle, that is super empowering, because then we have a choice with what we do with that. Because oftentimes we'll walk around in life and not have any idea what's going on in any of those thoughts, body sensations, or emotions. And then we react and we're not really conscious of it. It's just out of habit, or it's just an automatic reaction. So when we can say, look at that thought, or look at that body sensation. Whoa, I didn't realize my shoulders were up to my ears. If I drop them, if I unfurrow my brow, I didn't realize I was tense until I noticed that. So it's information, and it offers that little bit of pause, and then I can choose how I respond or what I want to do intentionally in that moment. So that's a really powerful one. So, and the other piece of that is it can help us pull us out of a challenging moment. If we're really feeling stressed or challenged by something, we can say, "Ooh, check that out. This is happening." Okay. And then that's my cue to take a few deep breaths. On the other side of that coin is that we can lock in and savor so many of life's beautiful moments. So if we're on the lookout throughout the day for beautiful moments, I might say, oh my gosh, I just walked outside today. And if I'm walking to my car and I'm trying to go somewhere, I'm thinking about where I'm going. But what's up in my triangle in this moment, I may be like, oof, I feel the breeze on my face, or the sun on my skin, or, I hear the birds chirping, and I feel content and happy, whatever. So we lock in that moment, and that is something that we can access at any time. Plus we're orienting and practicing that positivity bias.
So when we're feeling really overwhelmed, you can feel your nervous system humming.
Yes.
Especially when you lay down in bed at night. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
What is something when we feel so stressed out and overwhelmed, like we can't get through our to-do list, or we don't feel like we're on top of it? In that moment, what could we do when we notice we're stressed?
I would invite listeners to something so simple as literally stopping what you're doing, which is so much harder than it sounds, because when we're on that, I call it the hamster wheel of buzzing, it is so hard to hop off, because we feel like, I don't have time to hop off. I don't have time to take a breath, but we need to. And I also teach hands to heart, which is a reminder to be kind to yourself. And it's a reminder, and it also releases a little bit of oxytocin, which is that connection sort of feel good hormone. So it's that reminder to take a couple of deep breaths, even in through the nose and out through the mouth. And if you do that 3 times, if you just stop what you're doing and take 3 deep breaths, you will be amazed at how that can interrupt that's a low level of fight or flight that we tend to be operating under. And what we know about fight or flight is when we're in that state, that the front part of our brain, called the prefrontal cortex, that's in charge of planning and organizing and being able to step back and see the big picture. That shuts down or slows down. And what's in charge is that emotional amygdala. That's the animal part of our brain, primitive. So that's in charge. So we're really not in charge, and we're certainly not functioning as well as we could be. So when we take those nice deep breaths into our belly, we are calming down fight or flight, which sends a signal to our brain there's no danger. And that front part of our brain can work efficiently again. And we're able to choose a response, or just say, whoa, this isn't the end of the world, or whatever we need to tell ourselves to kind of back up a little bit.
And a lot of women say they find it difficult to fit self-care in, but you've just explained a couple of simple mindfulness practices right then, where we can put our hands on our heart and just inhale and exhale and do that for 3 counts. For me, that's just a form of self-care right there.
Oh, yeah.
Do you feel that sometimes when we think self-care, we think of the facial mask or the 1-hour walk? But they can be little incremental moments, can't they, throughout the day?
That's the premise of my book. There are 60, I believe, mindful breaks in the first book and 50 in the second. And so there are so many to choose from, and they're meant to be kind of picked up, read in a page or two. It's like they should take, you can stretch them out, of course, but they can really take 5 minutes. And that's where we feel, I mean, to recognize we have so much power over that. And if we're deliberate about where we're plugging those in, then it can really change, the course of our day and ultimately where we're going in our life. And so there are two pieces I teach. It's meditation is one piece of it, which is I recommend everybody learn to meditate and use a guided meditation to do that, because it's really like having training wheels. It's helpful in the beginning, especially. And that lays the foundation. So you're really kind of practicing mindfulness when you're calm-ish, and then you can pull it out and use it more when you really need it, when you're not feeling calm. And then the mindful breaks are these, some of them you can infuse right into the middle of your day while you're driving, while you're in the shower, while you're doing all kinds of things. You don't need to stop and go close your eyes and sit down somewhere. And so it's interrupting that fight or flight, stepping off that hamster wheel throughout the day. If you sprinkle your day with a few mindful breaks, so you're kind of stepping off, you're calming your nervous system down, and it really can make a huge difference. How we function, our energy level, we can sustain our energy longer. But if you think about when we're resisting and we're feeling stressed and tight all day long, we're exhausted by the end of the day, versus when we're feeling calm and energized and kind of deliberate, it's like we have more energy that can last a lot longer.
And when it comes to your own self-care rituals, what does that look like as a busy mum with a practice, with you've got a couple of books out now?
Yep.
Like your life is quite busy.
Yeah.
So you're really good at practicing what you preach here, because you're super busy, mum.
I try, and sometimes it feels like I'm doing a good, probably like all of us, sometimes you feel like, I think I got this, but then life happens and you're like, oh, okay, well, let's recalibrate here, which is part of what my books are about too. And have these expectations that are reasonable, that there are some seasons of our lives that it's going to look really different than other seasons. And so we have to be kind and gentle with ourselves of what we expect we can get done in a day. So I like to get up early. I think my kids over time made me that way. I don't know, but that's fine. I like it now. I'd like to get up a few minutes before them, or my son now, because I like to meditate for a few minutes, 10 minutes or so. And if a little longer, that's great. I'm a huge exerciser. I love to exercise like 6 days a week and move my body somehow. I love to be outside. Even in the winter here, when it's 20, 30 degrees in the morning, I put my parka on and grab my cup of coffee, and I will stand outside for 5 minutes, and I'm awake by the time I'm done. And I take a coffee mindful break, which is one of the mindful breaks in the book. That's exactly what I do in a morning routine. Try to connect with friends, and I try to be really good with boundaries about what I'm saying no to. And I say no to a lot of things, which is still not easy for me. It's gotten much easier, but I know what I really want to say yes to.
You mentioned then when you're having the coffee, in that moment, when you become present, that's when you are coming out of that thinking mind, isn't it? When we're thinking about maybe the past or thinking about the future, or we're caught in thought. When you do that mindful moment, when you're observing your coffee and what's in front of you, is that the basis for that mindful moment to help us become more present?
Definitely to come more present, absolutely, and to be more present for our lives. It doesn't automatically shift the anxiety or the depression. Sometimes we're like, whoa, I'm feeling big feelings here, when I stop and notice what they are. But meditation and mindfulness also trains us to be able to tolerate and kind of recognize that these big emotions or thoughts or whatever emotionally charged thoughts always pass. So we don't get stuck there. And sometimes we're afraid of that we might get stuck there if we really pay attention and we stop numbing out with Ben and Jerry's or mojitos or whatever we're doing. It's very brave to stop sometimes, to stop what we're doing. But we start to recognize again is how empowering it feels when we do.
Because I definitely have switched, say, looking at social media in the morning and scrolling, to doing mindfulness meditation, which I love, and then obviously gratitude journaling, and also paying more attention when I'm making my cup of coffee or tea to actually what's in front of me and what I'm doing. And I too am like you. I love to get out in the morning and do the walk. and get it done first thing in the morning, because then I'm set up for the rest of the day.
Yep.
And when it comes to having kids, you have so much demand. How do you even plan everything you need to do? Obviously, you know how to build in the mindfulness and you've got your structure. For someone who's maybe struggling to do self-care, would you suggest they have to figure out, like, it's either do it before the kids wake up or maybe at lunchtime when you're at work or after work? You still have to figure out, don't you, a little bit of timing if you want to get, say, a half an hour walk in, as an example?
Oh yeah. Oh, completely. Especially when you're in that phase of life. Definitely. And I've talked about this too. I think in the books of just being, it almost feels a little selfish, but it's not, to say, week by week, I will plan out, this is what my week looks like, because my schedule does vary a lot. This is where I'm fitting it all in, and I will get up early to fit it in or do whatever I have to do because it's important to me to exercise. Yeah. And sometimes if you have a partner, if you're co-parenting, then, how do you be really explicit to say, I really need this time. Can you help me protect this time? How do I find it? Where do I fit it in? So definitely, we want to schedule it, but we also, of course, especially with kids, have to be super flexible to know that it doesn't always play out that way. Can we kind of roll with it when it doesn't?
When I speak to a lot of women, they're like, my kid is the most important, my husband or my partner or my wife, my job is most important, my career is most important. And then they kind of become last on the list.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about putting our own oxygen mask on first, because, and especially with, physical health, mental health, all of it, if we don't have that, then we will burn out. We will get sick. And so then what does everyone have? Not much from us. That we do everyone a service. And I always say to moms, especially, like, if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids, but you will be a better mom. You will definitely be modeling. And don't we want our kids to take care of themselves? I think we do. So if you can model that for them, show them how to do it, that it's okay. And we have to just work through that with ourselves, switch the culture that it's, it's not great to martyr ourselves, that we need to put ourselves first sometimes. And that's really okay.
Yeah, I love your messages. They're so empowering, where we have to put ourselves first, and that's okay. We've got to put our oxygen mask on, that we need to take care of our physical health, mental health, emotional health, our overall well-being. Checking in with how we're reacting is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, we maybe need to take a few more mindful moments.
And that's some of those simple practices, even the triangle mindful break. It's sort of like checking in on a regular basis that takes 30 seconds to say, what's up here? What's up in my body? Because oftentimes our body's giving us all kinds of clues about things that are not working well or that we should pay attention to, but we're so busy in our heads, like you said, in the future or the past, and we're not noticing until it's like, oof, one day we wake up and our body will send us a big old signal that we can't ignore anymore.
I loved your desk scan, the mindfulness break, because I feel that sometimes when I'm writing, you're sort of like, you're in the zone, but then you maybe missed going to the toilet, getting up, having a drink. You missed a whole lot of stuff that the body was saying, hey, that can happen with us, can't it, when we're at work?
Yeah. I'm certainly guilty of that too, especially writing and getting in the zone where you're just like, oh my gosh, did an hour and a half really just pass? Like, I didn't even know that. So I appreciate that. And yeah, sometimes even setting a timer for yourself so you do get up and move around a little bit. But when you do notice, to pay attention and honor that and take care of our needs, because we're not going to get to the end of our lives and win any awards for saying, I held it in, or I didn't eat, or I didn't drink, or whatever. I didn't get enough sleep. It's not how it works.
And do you feel that now it's so important for us as women or anyone tuning in, that by taking care of ourselves, I believe we become like a role model to either the younger generation, your children, friends, family, community? And when we make our own contribution to practicing self-care, it also can empower and inspire others to do the same. So it has this beautiful little trickling effect.
Definitely. I 100% agree. Yes.
And with your children, do you try to explain to them the importance of self-care?
It's part of just who I am and what I do and what I prioritize. And so,
well, it's interesting because I observed my mum growing up as a kid, and as an example, on Sundays was her self-care Sunday day, where she'd paint her toenails, drink tea, do fruit juices, read feel-good books. It was a very slow day.
good for her.
She didn't once go, I'm doing self-care here, doing my
Yeah.
nails or doing my skincare. I observed that every Sunday.
Yeah.
This is what she did, and this is what we do. We go slow, we take care of ourselves. And it was the greatest gift growing up with that. So I've continued those practices. So I'm sure that any mum or person tuning in, just like yourself, when you're practicing it, your kids are there looking anyway, observing you. Like you observe your mum or your parent or carer.
Right.
And you really are the role model. Now, with your book, I truly loved it. It was incredible. For everybody, I'm holding it up if you go to the Spark Girl YouTube channel. But it's Breathe, Empower, Achieve, a 5-minute mindfulness for women who do it all. And it was an incredible read about how to ditch the stress without losing your edge. There are just so many mindfulness breaks. So for anyone who is feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, like your world is spiraling out of control, you really feel that you are not looking after yourself. You just don't feel good. You feel blah. Definitely grab a copy of this book. What's your hope now for your book readers?
I mean, my hope is that you take what you need from that book, and because there are so many pieces to it, the breathe practices are about calming and awareness, self-awareness. The empower practices are about confidence and boosting our assertiveness, boundaries, and the achieve practices are about achieving whatever our version of success looks like, which is so unique to each of us. And so that the different times in our lives, or moments in our lives, we might need to pull out a calming break or an empowering break or something where I want to reach some big goals. And so that it can serve you as you move through this, what I call an upward spiral of growth, hopefully in our lives, that it's intentional and it's joyful.
And what I really love is once you learn the mindfulness break, you can then practice it time and time again.
Right.
What I loved about the book was you learn the mindfulness break and then you can do it, like for me, at the desk or when you're eating lunch. So it's not like you just read the book and that's it. It's this tool and skill and technique that you're learning for life.
Yeah.
And that's what I really, really loved about your book.
That's good to hear. Exactly. Because it's the intention is that they become habits. So, you kind of stack those habits on, you practice a mindful break for a while, and then it becomes something you just do. And then it grounds you without having to take up too much of your energy and thought.
Right. You've got the book to go back to, but at the same time, once you do the practice, you can always incorporate that into your life. And I loved all the quotes you included as well.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you love reading books.
Yeah.
I can see all of the books behind you.
I do.
And you also so fascinated about sharing other women's stories.
Yeah, I did interweave different empowering women's stories to know that it's possible and to see how different women use their own mindful tools to go out there and live their dreams, really.
Well, this book is so empowering, between the stories of other women, the beautiful positive quotes that you included. It was really easy to read. A lot of women I'm speaking to and people of all ages are really experiencing the effects of burnout. They're feeling quite exhausted. Is that coming up for you a lot in your practice as well? Empowerment work?
Yeah, definitely. It's this feeling of just kind of overall tiredness, this heaviness that people feel and just don't have as much energy maybe as they normally do. So I think we need to be conscious of that and offer ourselves a little bit of grace that we are still in a very odd time, challenging time in a lot of ways. As human beings, we accommodate to conditions and we just sort of forget that it is a really unusual circumstance. Languishing is the word. I don't know if that made its way over to the vernacular in Australia, there's a whole article that Adam Grant wrote in the New York Times about languishing as a word that kind of describes how people have been feeling. It's not quite depression, but it's not thriving.
Yeah. And I've had to switch off the news.
Definitely.
And I've switched to reading your book.
Much better, yes.
Breathe, Empower, Achieve. And I have to say that has been much more better and beneficial to my mental health, my well-being, and my self-care. So anyone who's feeling really overwhelmed, you can even grab this from your local library. But how can we now stay in touch with you after this podcast show?
So my website is shondamoralis.net. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Love to meet everyone, so connect.
Thank you so much for writing your amazing books, for helping us with your incredible words of wisdom, tips, really just guiding us to how we can create more mindful moments in our day. Thank you, Shonda Moralis. You are an absolute light worker on Mother Earth, and your work is needed. So thank you. I'm super grateful.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me and allowing me to share.
Thank you. We'll say goodbye to Shonda Moralis. Be sure to subscribe to the Spirit Girl Talk Show podcast, to leave a 5-star rating and review, and to tell someone you love to. And together, let's feel good from within.